He used to associate with Advaita Prabhu, who was much older. Advaita Acharya was 50 years older than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's why they painted pictures of him with gray hair, white hair, and a beard. He was old. Haridas Thakur was also old. So when they had to run for their life from Jagannath, Nityananda was setting a pace, running. And they got away, and Haridas said, "Look, Nitai, I can't do this with you. I'm old. I don't think I will go out on Sankirtan with you anymore." But Nityananda came back the next day and he approached Nagai and Madai. You all know this story. Everybody in that area knows this story because it was very significant. Nityananda Prabhu converted Jagai and Madai, and they became great devotees. From the lowest of men, they become Uttam Bhaktas. I think Jaipatak Maharaj said that Madai became Madhava Brahmachari. I don't know what the Jagai became. But when they became converted, everyone in the area could see the power of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that was Nityananda's purpose. That was his goal. He thought, if I can convert these guys, then my Lord Gauranga, his name will be glorified. And he did it. In a similar way, our Prabhupada came west. He left India and he went to America and converted thousands of Jagais and Madais with the Shakti power of Nityananda, Nityananda Avesh. When Prabhupada left, a couple of his godbrothers told the devotees, he's a Shakti Avesh avatar. He has to be. Look at what he's done. They heard all the glories of Prabhupada. Every country Prabhupada went, he established temples, recruited devotees. Said he's Shakti Avesh avatar. And at that time, Govinda Maharaj, who was a disciple of Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Maharaj, he said, you say that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is a Shakti Avesh avatar? He said, yes. He said, what kind of Avesh? His question was this, what kind of Avesh? So Bhagavatam describes there's different kinds of Shakti Avesh avatar. When the specific power, empowerment is given. And Sridhar Maharaj, when he was asked this, what kind of Avesh was Prabhupada, our Prabhupada, what kind of Avesh? He said, Nityananda Avesh. And he showed how Prabhupada was so much in the mood of Nityananda, going to the most fallen places. When Prabhupada wanted to come, people were telling him, don't go there. Don't go there. They're all meat-eaters, drunkards, womenizers, motorcar drivers. That's how Prabhupada would speak. He said, don't go there. What will you eat there? But Prabhupada that didn't deter him. He went and he conquered. When he came back to India and he brought his followers, young, enthusiastic Western disciples, people were shocked. They didn't think it was possible. that anybody would even be interested in their religion, their way of life. But this is truly Nityananda's mercy. So, in the song, he said, Nityananda Prabhu, even the chandalas, the dog eaters, achandale de nam nitai doyamoy, everybody he was given his mercy to. He was very eager to preach. And our Prabhupada was very eager to preach. Very eager to preach. Everywhere. We are all here because of that. And we have to also, if we have appreciation, if we think that I've gained something by following this, by joining this Hare Krishna movement, if you feel I benefited, then you must go out and make others beneficial. That is our duty. So, Nityananda Prabhu, this is his mercy. So that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in his song, we don't have to worry about, we shouldn't have any more fear of Kali Yuga, because the merciful Nityananda Prabhu, he is counteracting that. Okay? So let's hear a little bit from Chaitanya Charitamrita. I wanted to read today I thought this was the volume which Shakshi Gopal. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So this chapter describes the activities of Shakshi Gopal. Very beautiful story. I won't read the whole thing because, well, but briefly, one young Brahmin and an old man were going on pilgrimage, and the young devotee, the young Brahmin, helped the old man. And when they arrived at this temple where there was a Gopal deity, a very beautiful deity, and the older man was feeling so grateful that the young fellow helped him, because in those days they used to walk to go anywhere. There was no motor car, there's no trains, If you want to go, if you're living in Jagannath Puri and you want to go to Vrindavan, you have to walk. If you're living in Mayapur and you want to go to Jagannath, you have to walk. So the old, and the culture was people would go on pilgrimage. They retire from working and they go on pilgrimage. So this old man, he went, and the young Brahmin helped him. So when he got to the temple of Gopal, he was feeling so happy that he expressed in the temple, in front of the deity, he expressed his gratitude to the young Brahmin, saying, "Oh, you've helped me so much. I wanted to make this. I didn't think I could make it, because it's a long journey." And the boy said, "No, you are like my father. It's my duty to help you." And the man said, "Well, I want to do something. I want to show my appreciation. I want to give you my daughter's hand in marriage when we go back." And the boy says, "No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. I wasn't helping you to get something in return, But the man insisted. And then they saw the deed and they went back, and after a few days the boy came to the man's house because the man promised. But when he came there, the family members, they didn't like that agreement, they didn't like what the boy was saying, that the father promised me a daughter. So the old man's son, his wife, they were like very upset. The wife says, "If you let my daughter marry this poor fella," the Brahmin was a poor guy, so that the woman said, "I'll take my life." She was not into it. And the son said, he's not into it either. So he went and he was a little heavy with the Brahmin, saying, "You must have tricked my father. You give him some drugs or something. My father wouldn't do something like this." He said, "No, he promised in front of Gopal." "Who's Gopal?" "He's a deity." But the son, he said, "Well, if you say my father promised in front of Gopal, let Gopal come here and bear witness. Then I will let you, then you can marry my daughter, my sister." So the boy said, "No problem." So he walked back to, I think it was Vrindavan, and he went to the deity and he says, "Gopal, we have a problem." He's talking to the deity. "We have a problem. You remember I came here with this old man. He promised his daughter hand in marriage in front of you. And now, because of his family, he cannot keep his promise. So, because he promised in front of you, I'm concerned for him. If you make a promise in front of the deity, you have to keep it. Otherwise, there'll be consequence." So he said, so therefore Gopal, he's talking to Gopal, he said, "You have to come with me. You have to come with me back to the village where this man lives." So the deity spoke to the boy, because he was devotee. He said, "But I'm a deity. How do you expect me to walk?" And the boy said, "If deity can talk, he can walk." By logic, he defeated Krishna. Gopal said, well, you have a point there. So he agreed to come. And he said, you walk in front, I'll follow you. You will know that I'm following you by the sound of my ankle bells. Because Krishna wears ankle bells. He said, you will hear my ankle bells, and so you'll know that I'm coming behind you. But don't look back. Don't look to see if I'm coming. If you look back, I won't go any further. So the boy went. They went together, and Gopal followed him all the way, and it's a big deity. But when they were getting close, just on the outskirts of the village, the boy was tempted to look back. And when he looked back, Gopal was standing there playing his flute. And he said, I told you, now I'm not going any further. And the boy said, that's okay, we're almost there. So he said, you wait here, I'll go let everybody know. And he went to the village and he told everybody, Gopal has come. Gopal has come. Come and see. And all the people in the village, including the family, came and they saw Gopal there. And no one could understand. How did... They looked at the deity and they looked at the boy. It's not possible for him to carry this heavy deity from so long distance. It was a miracle. So the family had to, yes, Gopal has come to bear witness. So since that day, this deity has been known as Shakshi Gopal, Witness Gopal, Gopal the witness. So he came for his devotee. This story was told to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeated the story to his devotees. So, I'm beginning right after this point. After the Gopal arrived, we shall read. Eventually, first, Lord Gopal stayed where he walked. He stayed there, and the two Brahmins engaged in his service. After hearing of this incident, many people came from different countries to see this deity of Gopal. Eventually, the king of that country heard of this wonderful story. So he also came to see Gopal and thus became very satisfied. Thus, the king constructed a nice temple there for Gopal. And regular service was established and executed. Gopal became very famous under the name of Shakshi Gopal, or the Witness Gopal. This deity stayed in Vidyanagara and accepted service for a very long time. That deity is still there. Prabhupada comments, the city of Vidyanagara is in South India, on the banks of the river Godavari. It's the place where the river Godavari flows into the Bay of Bengal. The Orissa kingdom was very powerful at that time, and this place, known as Kotadesh, was the capital of Orissa. But of course, it was then known as Vidyanagara. At that time, the king Raj Purushottam managed to control Orissa and appoint a government. And the present city of Vidyanagar is on the southeast side of the river, only 25 miles from Rajmahendi. During the time of Prataparuj Maharaj, during the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Ramananda Roy was the governor of that city, Vidyanagara. Later on, there was a fight, and this country was conquered by King Purushottam of Orissa. The king was victorious, and he took possession he took possession of the throne known as Manikya Singhasan. It's a throne that was bedecked with many jewels. This king was a great devotee and advanced in the civilization of the Aryans. He begged at the lotus feet of Gopal, the deity, "Please come to my kingdom." When the king begged the deity to come to his kingdom, Gopal, who was already obliged to the people in Vidyanagar, he accepted the prayer of the king. And so the king took the Gopal deity back to Cuttack. After winning that throne, King Purushottam took it to Jagannath Puri and presented the throne to Lord Jagannath. In the meantime, worship was established for the Gopal deity at Cuttaka. When the Gopal deity was installed at Cuttaka, the queen of Purushottam, the queen of the king, went herself to see this deity. And with great devotion, she presented various kinds of ornaments. The queen had a very valuable pearl which she used to wear on her nose. And she wished to give it to the Gopal deity. She began to think, if there was a hole in the deity's nose, I could possibly transfer the pearl there. So thinking like this, the queen offered her obeisances to the deity and returned to her palace. But that night, she had a dream of Gopal, the deity. And Gopal appeared to her in her dream and began to speak to her. Gopal said, "During my childhood, my mother made a hole in my nose. With great endeavor, and she had set a pearl there. That hole is still there in me, and you can use your pearl, what you desired to give me." So after this dream, the queen explained her dream to her husband, the king. And both of them went together to the temple with the pearl. Seeing the hole in the nose of the deity, they set the pearl there. And being very pleased, they held a big festival for the deity. Since then, this Gopal deity has been situated in the city of Cuttack and has been still known up to today, known as Shakshi Gopal. Thus Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this narration of the Gopal deity's activities, and both he and his personal devotees became very pleased. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting before the Gopal deity, all the devotees saw him and the deity as being of the same form. Both of them were of the same complexion, and both had the same gigantic bodies. Both of them were wearing saffron cloth and were both very grave. The devotees saw that both Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gopal were brilliantly effulgent and had eyes like lotuses. They were both absorbed in ecstasy, and their faces resembled full moons. When Nityananda Prabhu saw the Gopal Didi and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in that way, that they are identical, he began to exchange remarks with the devotees, all of whom were smiling. Thus, with great pleasure, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent the night in that temple. And after going to Mangalarti in the morning, he continued on his journey. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived at Kamalapura, he took his bath in the Bhagirandi river, and he left his sannyas danda in the hands of Lord Nityananda to keep. Prabhupada comments. Time? That in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, this is another book, we are reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Bhagavat was written before this one by Vrindavan Das Thakur, and there are many pastimes of Nityananda and Chaitanya that are not in this book, but it's also what's there in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So, in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Prabhupada writes, it is said that when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived at Bhuvaneshwar, he visited a temple of Lord Shiva there, known as Gupta Kashi, which means concealed Varanasi. Lord Shiva established this as a place of pilgrimage by bringing water from all the holy places and creating a lake there known as Bindu Sarova. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his bath in that lake, and feeling a great regard for Lord Shiva, from the spiritual point of view, today people still go there to take bath in this lake, Bindu Sarova. Actually, just by taking a bath there, one becomes very healthy, even from the material point of view. Taking a bath and drinking the water of this lake can cure any disease in the stomach. Any disease, even COVID.
That's a mental disease.
Yeah. So regular bathing in this lake certainly cures indigestion. But the river, or Bhagirandi, is today known as Dandabangi Nadi. It is just about 6 miles north of Jagannath Puri, and the reason for the change in name is given as follows. This is the pastime I wanted to read. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to that temple of Lord Shiva, Nityananda Prabhu was keeping his danda in custody. And Nityananda broke the danda of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and threw it into the river Bhagirandi. And so later this river became known as Danda Banga Nadi. After seeing the temple of Lord Jagannath from a distant place, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately became ecstatic. And offering obeisances to the temple, he began to dance in ecstasy of love of God. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu laughed, cried, danced, and made many ecstatic vibrations and sounds. Although the temple was only 6 miles away, the Jagannath temple from where he was, although it was only 6 miles away, to him the distance seemed like thousands of miles. Prabhupada comments, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in ecstasy, he considered one moment separated from Krishna to be like 12 years. That's one of his Shikshastakam verses. Jugaitam nimishena chakshusha pravishaitam. So after seeing Jagannath temple from a distant place, the Lord considered the 6-mile path to be 1,000 miles long. Thus, walking and walking, the Lord eventually arrived at a place known as Atharanal. Arriving there, he expressed his external consciousness, speaking to Nityananda Prabhu. He asked Lord Nityananda, "Please return my danda." Nityananda Prabhu replied, "Oh, it has been broken into 3 parts." Like, reminds me of children. Do something, they don't take responsibilities. They say, "It broke." So, Nityananda Prabhu is acting like that. He says, "Oh, the danda has been broken into 3 pieces. Actually, when you fell down in ecstasy, I caught you. But both of us together fell upon your danda and it broke." Which is not what happened. Your danda broke under our weight. And where the pieces have gone, I cannot say. But he actually broke it and personally and threw it in the river. So, Nityananda continues, "It is certainly because of my offense that your danda was broken. Now you can punish me as you think proper." After hearing the story about how his danda had been broken, the Lord expressed a little sadness, and displaying a bit of anger, he began to speak to Nityananda Prabhu as follows. Prabhupada comments, why Nityananda Prabhu broke the danda. He says, Sri Nityananda Prabhu considered Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's acceptance of sannyas to be useless. And therefore he relieved the Lord of the trouble of carrying the danda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expressed anger because he wanted to teach the other sannyasis that they should not give up the danda before attaining the platform of Paramhamsa. I think Prabhupada said they had to carry it around for I forget how many years. And Prabhupada used to also make his sannyasis carry the danda. Even Prabhupada himself, when he came, he carried his danda as he was traveling, and then after a while, he put it down, and then he would walk with a cane. But of course, Prabhupada was a Paramhamsa. So, Seeing that the regulated principles of sannyas could be slackened by such an action, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to carry the danda personally. However, Nityananda Prabhu broke it and threw it away. For this reason, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed a little anger. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita, Yad yada charati sreshtas tattha devitaro jana. Whatever great people do, others will follow. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to follow the Vedic principles strictly in order to save inexperienced neophyte devotees who try to imitate the Paramhamsas. Not carry a danda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "You have all benefited me by bringing me to Nilachal, Jagannath Puri. And my only possession was this one danda. As a sannyasi, he didn't have anything else. He says, this was my only possession. And now you have not kept it. So all of you should go before or go behind me to see Lord Jagannath. But I don't want to walk with you all anymore." He's expressing a little anger. And Mukunda Datta told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "My Lord, you should go ahead and we will all follow behind you, some distance. We won't go with you." So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to walk very swiftly ahead of all the other devotees. No one could understand the real purpose of both of these lords, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. Even the devotees, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even they could not understand why Nityananda Prabhu broke the danda. And why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed him to do it. Because nothing happens without.
Inspired him.
Yeah. They said not even a blade of grass moves without the sanction of God. So Nityananda Prabhu breaking the danda. Nityananda Prabhu, we always say, he is the other self of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He will not do anything that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't want. So he was, as you say, he was inspired from within to break the danda. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu externally expressed anger. So this pastime of breaking the danda is very deep. Only one whose devotion is fixed upon the lotus feet of the two lords can understand it. Prabhupada comments. One who understands Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu in reality, they can understand their identity as well as the breaking of the danda. All of the previous acharyas, being induced to engage themselves fully in the service of the Lord, gave up attachment for material life and they all accepted the danda. All the previous acharyas. Which signifies full engagement of the mind, speech and body in the service of the Lord. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the regulated principles of the renounced order of life That is completely clear. He wanted to do that. However, in the Paramhamsa stage, there is no need to accept a danda. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was certainly in the Paramhamsa stage. Nonetheless, to indicate that everyone should take sannyas at the end of life in order to engage fully in the service of the Lord, even a Paramhamsa like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his confidential devotees follow this regulative principle unfailingly. Indeed, that was his purpose. And Nityananda Prabhu, who was his eternal servitor, he believed that there was no need for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to carry the danda and to declare to the world that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was above all regulations. He broke the danda into 3 pieces and threw it in the river. This pastime is therefore known as Danda Bhanga Leela. And this has been explained by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The glories of Lord Gopal, who was merciful to the Brahman, the glories of Gopal are very great. And the narration of the Shakshi Gopal pastime was spoken by Nityananda Prabhu and heard by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada comments. There are 4 points of instruction one should consider in the story of Shakshi Gopal. First point, the deity of Sri Gopal, deity is known as Archa Vigraha, worshipable form. The deity is eternally Satchidananda Vigraha. It is a transcendental form of the Lord. And second point is the deity surpasses material regulative principles and extends the reality of transcendental principles. Third, one can be situated in a transcendental position after becoming a Brahmana. But as a Brahmana, one has to follow the regulative principles very strictly. And Prabhupada quotes a mantra that most of you know. Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagaditaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. This indicates that a devotee who is under the protection of Krishna is automatically situated as a Brahmana. And such a Brahmana is not illusioned. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj gives a blessing to those who, the readers and the listeners of this pastime. He says, one who hears this narration of Lord Gopal with faith and love will very soon attain the lotus feet of Sri Gopal. So, benefits of hearing. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, 5th chapter, describing the activities of Shakshi Gopal. Kaviraj Goswami concludes saying, praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath and always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita following in their footsteps. Haribol. There are many such pastimes of deities doing things, acting extraordinarily. There's another pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Forget who is it.
When we go by train from Calcutta to Jagannath Puri, the train stops at Sakshi Gopal station.
Yes.
There is written Sakshi Gopal. I don't know if foreigner can go in this temple.
I have never gone to that temple, but I also heard that, like the Jagannath temple, foreigners are not allowed in. I'm a foreigner, but I got into the Jagannath temple. I did. So, where there's a will, there's a way. In fact, the next time I go, I want to go and see Sakshi Gopal. And I met one Indian devotee, an older man, and he said, I told him I wanted to see this deity, and he said, you come, I will take you personally. So, several of Prabhupada's disciples actually have gotten in to see Lord Jagannath. Radhanath Swami is one. He got in to see Lord Jagannath. Although they're very strict, he's no longer with us, but Bhakti Tirtha Swami got in to see Lord Jagannath. And there's, when I went with one devotee, one Mataji from Brazil. She's the one that was coaxing me to go. She says, I went in already, I saw him. And you look like a Bengali, you should go. And she says, but don't talk, because they will know you're a foreigner if you talk. So I said, okay, but I don't want to get beat up, because they're known to beat people that carry sticks, the pandas. If they suspect that you are not, they can be very intense. And this has been going on since the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, since before. Because when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to, as described, when he first went into the Jagannath temple, and he saw Lord Jagannath, he just fainted in ecstasy. Seeing Jagannath, he saw Shyamasundar. And he fainted and fell down on the ground, and the pandas came running over with sticks to beat him. We don't allow that in here.
I was wondering, because sometimes I saw some people worshipping Gopal, whether they were not initiated. So some people told me, oh, you can worship Gopal, but it depends on, I don't know, you have an agreement or someone needs to give it to you. So I was wondering how can we worship this deity? How is it possible?
You mean not this Sakshi Gopal, but any Gopal deity? Yeah. No, well, you have to be, some qualification is required.
Okay.
After all, the deity is non-different from Krishna. And Prabhupada taught, that, if we just disregard the rules and regulations and start doing things, then that'll create a problem. I don't know who told you that.
I mean, I just saw someone who was not initiated, having the deity of the power, and I asked, how can I, and she told me you can just ask to...
Yeah. No, I mean, if you go to India, in the shopkeepers will sell deities to anybody. You have the money. But and if someone who is not initiated or whatever keeps the deity at home, of course it's different than here.
Yeah.
Here deities are worshipped strictly according to Pancharatric regulations. But if someone keeps the deity at home, who is not a Brahmin initiated,
Can cause problem.
well, there's some benefit to that, having the form. But it's not the same. If he thinks that I have my own deity, I don't need to go to the temple, then he's an illusion.
Okay.
During Prabhupada's time, Prabhupada allowed in the beginning he allowed one sannyasi, Vishnu Jan Maharaj, to have a deity. Nobody else. Everyone else had to come to the temple and support the worship of the deity established by Prabhupada. But Vishnu Jan Maharaj was a sannyasi, and he lived in a bus with a few brahmacharis, and he traveled all over America, preaching, doing kirtan, and making devotees. And he had a deity, Prabhupada allowed him to have a deity called Radha Damodar. And the party became known as the Radha Damodar party. That deity Radha Damodar is now stationed in Gita Nagari.
Not Washington?
Yeah,
Not Washington?
no, Gita Nagari.
Why is that?
It's a farm community.
Where?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. And Prabhupada, that farm has a history. It was purchased by the New York Temple. At the time I was in New York Temple. And the New York Temple bought this farm. And we used to get milk from twice a week. Devotees would make a run to Pennsylvania and bring back
Because Pennsylvania is close to New York.
Yeah, on the East Coast, all the states are close. Different from the West Coast. A couple hours you're there.
But it's 6 hours to Gita Nagari.
From New York?
Yeah. Because New Vrindavan was like 10 hours. It's between.
I don't know, if you say so, must be so. But New York Temple purchased that, and at that time I was in charge of the kitchen, I was head cook. And twice a week they would bring these big, what do they call them? Urns, full of milk. 2 of them. And we would have so much milk. And a quarter of the milk, quarter of the top of those urns was cream. And we used to make a burfi to serve Radha Govinda just from cream. It was the ultimate burfi. But then, after some time, Prabhupada came and went to visit the farm, and he gave it the name Gita Nagari.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it was at that time that it was decided that Radha Damodar, the deities, would leave the bus party and stay there.
Gita Nagari,
Gita.
Gita Nagari means there is a meaning.
Place in India.
Yeah, when it is the Gita is being spoken.
The Gita is sung
A place where there is much talk about
at Gita, yeah.
Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. Prabhupada rode on one of the Radha Damodar bus. Originally there was one bus only. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he liked the program of Vishnu Jan Maharaj traveling with me. And he came up with the idea, he wanted to expand it. He said, why only one bus? He said he wanted to have 10 buses. So he went to Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, told Prabhupada what his idea is. And he wanted a loan. He wanted to borrow money from his spiritual man to buy more buses. And Prabhupada gave him.
When men cruise on the bus, they had to tie her to deities.
Mm-hmm. Well, the name Damodar is, Krishna was tied. Yeah. So, anyway, when Prabhupada went there, he drove from New York in the bus, in one of the buses, and went to Gitanagari. And he spent the night. He said many nice things there. While Prabhupada was there, some little incident happened. I was told, I wasn't there at that time. But they were showing Prabhupada, here we have come and look at our barn where we keep, the cows and everything, And Prabhupada was genuinely interested to see how they were taking care of the cows and everything. And when they went into the barn, there was a cat. A cat was relaxing in the barn. And Prabhupada saw the cat. And then a moment later, a rat scooted across in front of the cat, running, Prabhupada saw that too. But the cat didn't go chasing after the rat. He just was relaxing. And Prabhupada looked and he said, this is Vrindavan. The cat and the rat and the cows. Just a little incident like that he appreciated. And when he was leaving, he turned to one sannyasi and he said, did you see it? And he said, see what, Prabhupada? Did you see the cat and the rat and the cow? It's Vrindavan. So he said, Prabhupada, wherever you look, you see Vrindavan. Vrindavan is a state of consciousness. So anyway, that's how that deity, Radha Damodar, has a history. Originally with the one sannyasi and now it's a community worshipping.
Actually, the temple of Baltimore, both these deities had them made, but they did not have a place to worship, so they were in a closet. And they heard about it, the devotees, and Kirtanananda stole them and copied.
Oh, there's more story.
I think it's a long story, but it's happened.
When I first saw Radha Damodar, it was on Vishnu Jan Maharaj's bus. I first saw him. I was in the New York temple and I was a new devotee, a Bhakta Alvin. And Vishnu Jan Maharaj came. He arrived sometime in the night, but I didn't know who he was, but he came in and everyone was so happy to see him. He led Mangal Artik, and it was very ecstatic. It was like the first real ecstatic kirtan I ever heard, Vishnu Jan Maharaj. And when he was finished, he slipped out the temple room door and he went. And one brahmachari told me, come, we're going to go on Maharaj's bus, because he's going to have another Mangal Artik there for his deities. So he said, we'll get 2 Mangal Artiks this morning. So we went on the bus and Vishnujan was in his bus. And I was like, it was really, I didn't expect to see what I saw. Because the bus was finished so wonderful, like a temple. Outside it just looked like a hippie bus, painted with all colors, yellow, red, green, white, black. It looked like a Rath Yatra cart. But when you step inside, marble floors and mirrors on the walls and a nice old, everything was really opulent. And Vishnujan was sitting down serenading Radha Damodar with a harmonium so sweetly. I was captivated. So when we were finished, after the Mangalarti, the brahmachari told me, okay, let's go back and chant japa. I said, wait a minute. And I went up I was new. I didn't understand anything about etiquette or anything. So I went up to Maharaj and Vishnujan. I was so captivated. I said, Maharaj, take me with you when you go. I thought, because I think he lives like this, traveling, chanting. I wanted that life. I said, take me with you. And he looked at me and smiled and he says, I don't mind. I'll take you, but you have to go and ask your temple president. If he says yes, then I don't mind. I'll take you. And all my hopes were dashed. Because I knew that president will never let me go.
The fight.
Yeah.
Temple president and he.
Yeah. I knew he would not let me go. Actually, Vishnujan was the only sannyasi who didn't steal devotees. It was a period in ISKCON where sannyasis would come to the temple and try to steal the brahmacharis. Some of them would speak to the brahmacharis and tell them, meet me on the corner. So they won't look like we're taking him. But they tell him, meet me on the corner, bring your stuff, we're going. And it became a problem, and the presidents had to go to Prabhupada and complain. The sannyasis are stealing our brahmacharis. Because they would tell them, don't stay here. If you stay in this temple, you will fall down. They used to
get married.
Well, that's what they were getting. This is what they would say. I was told like this.
You were told the same.
Yeah. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, bless his good heart, he came to New York and just before he joined Radha Damodar, and I was already leading kirtan. And after the kirtan, he called me and he said, I'm going traveling and I need a servant. And I want you to come traveling with me. This is after Vishnujan had said, and I told him, Maharaj, I appreciate your kindness, it's wonderful, but no thanks. He said, why? He said, you'll get fixed up if you travel with me. You travel with a sannyasi, you'll get fixed up. You stay here, you're going to get married. And if you get married, 50% of the chance for going back to Godhead is lost. This is how they used to preach. And he said, but I told him, I said, look, I'm new here. I'm just getting to know, I'm just making friends with some devotees. I'm just beginning to feel like this is my home. And, I don't want to leave this and go. Although I know what you say is true, it'll be good for me to go with you. But when I said that, when I told him that I'm just developing friendships here and this is my home, I wanted, he stopped, he backed off.
And now you regret?
No. The next time I saw him, I didn't see him for years. Next time I saw him, I was married. And he said, see, I told you so. But he had a smile when he told me so. But with Vishnujan, I was charmed to go with him because he sang so sweetly. Actually, everybody in the movement loved Vishnujan. Everyone loved Prabhupada, and after Prabhupada, everyone loved Vishnujan Maharaj. That's how much he had endeared himself to. Wherever he went, the children loved him, the grihastas loved him, brahmacharis, everybody loved him. He was a unique person.
Would you say that was because his sweet devotion or the way he was connected? Why he was really so special? Because
His devotion, One devotee asked Prabhupada about him, and he said, Prabhupada, it seems like, everybody likes Vishnujan Maharaj so much. It seems like you're giving him more mercy than anybody else. And Prabhupada said, no, my mercy is equally given, but he's taking more. Yes, he is taking more mercy. He was very enthusiastic. And so I wanted to go with him, and I didn't know anything yet, but I could tell this guy is special. So I asked him, but he probably was asked wherever he went, somebody wanted to go with him. But he wouldn't disrupt the temple. Actually, he used to make devotees. You would go to college universities and set up have a little mini festival. He'd park his bus, and he'd bring the deities out of the bus, set them on, and chant and distribute khichdi and halava to the students. And he'd make devotees. Some students would just drop out of college. They want to go with him, and he would bring them on the bus, and then he would drop them off at a temple. So he used to give devotees to the temples, but he wouldn't just steal devotees from the temples. That's how, that was his personality.
Yes, I think Prabhu wrote beautiful books about the whole Adadamodar party and about Vishnujan and Jayananda.
Yeah, I know.
Beautiful.
Vyasaki.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a book you could
Amazing book.
get more attention. Anyway, we have gone over time. I'll be penalized.
Oh, no.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.